Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! I have for you today a quick and simple card. I've needed a lot of quick and simple layouts lately, and this one I am calling the Panel DSP card. For obvious reasons, it has 3 panels of DSP on the front. It's a great way to showcase all that designer series paper that you've probably got lying around in your house. At least if you're anything like me, I've got oodles and oodles. So very quick and simple card, and I'm going to show you how to make it. So the first thing you're going to need is a card base. It doesn't matter which style of card base you use. I am using Night of Navy, and this is 5.5 by 8.5. I've scored it in the middle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fold it on the score line, and then I'm gonna set this aside for a minute. Next, I have a piece of basic white. This is 5.25 by 4. And I'm going to use this as an anchor piece for these pieces of DSP. I don't think I'm quite skilled enough to perfectly center all 3 of these on the page, so I'm kind of going to show you a cheat. So take your panel of 5.25 by 4. And you can use an inexpensive piece of cardstock if you have that around your house, because you're going to be covering it up completely. You could probably even use a piece of paper if you liked. But you're going to need 3 pieces of designer series paper. They measure 1 3/4 inches wide by 4 inches tall. And so I've got 3 different prints here, and what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to glue them on this paper because they are just the right size to cover up the entire piece of cardstock there. So you can use your favorite kind of glue, no special glue needed. And all I do is I run my adhesive around the edges. I'm using Stampin' Seal for this. If you use liquid glue, remember to have a light touch so that it doesn't seep out and either wrinkle your paper or get all over your card. And then I'm going to decide which order I want my paper to be in. Whichever piece, can you see how sticky my glue is? It's sticking to my fingers. Whichever piece of DSP you want first, I just line it up on the top corner and then right down the side. And I put a strip of glue in the center as well, just to kind of keep that paper anchored in the center. That's why it's sticking all over the place. My second panel here, I'm just gonna butt right up against. You have a little lip since you glued that first piece down. So I just make sure the top and the bottom look equal, and then lay that flat, and then grab that last piece. Always make sure your pattern is going in the right direction. And if you're using an all over print, it doesn't matter. Then this last one, again, just butt up against the middle one, and there you go. So you've got a beautifully centered or nice and even panel that you can center much easier on the card front than trying to do all 3 of those individually. Now you might want to check, especially if you're using a dark cardstock like the Night of Navy, if you have any extra white showing, if you used white cardstock, you might want to trim it off with a pair of scissors, or if you notice you have any overhang on the back. I don't, so I think I'm good here. And once you are good to go, just grab your adhesive again. I'm going to do exactly what I did on the front of the card, if my glue stops being persnickety here. And just frame the edges and then 1 strip down the middle. I definitely don't want this peeling off the card front. And then this gets centered right on the front, quick and simple. Your next piece is a piece of basic white, or you can use any color you like. This is a 1 1/4 inches tall by 5 1/4 inches wide. This I'm just going to glue flat on the card front. You could always pop it on dimensionals if you like. I try not to build up an excessive amount of height, so I'm going to glue this on flat. And you can experiment with where you might like this panel to go on the front of your card. You can move it up a little bit. I tended towards the bottom with most of my designs. And now we're going to make the banner that is here on the right side of the card. So to do that, I have a piece of balmy blue. All my colors were pulled right out of this designer series paper. My piece here is 1 inch tall and about 3 inches long. The reason I have the question mark here is because you might want it to be something different than 3 inches. I specifically measured my paper to go with the stamp that I want to use. And I am using the Framed Florets stamp set today. This is a beautiful new stamp set that Stampin' Up! Has released. You can check that and any other products out on thefaithfulstamper.stampinup.net. And if you happen to be watching between November 15th and 18th, 2022, there is a fantastic sale going on just about everything in our annual catalog, so be sure to check that out. So the stamp set I am using is photopolymer. So I'm gonna bring out my Stampin' Pierce mat. It's a thick piece of foam, and it just gives me a little cushion for underneath my card. My cardstock while I stamp. And actually, before I stamp, I'm gonna do one quick thing. I want to taper the ends. I decided not to do a banner. I'm gonna use our lovely Labels Pick-a-Punch. And this is great because it's actually 6 punches in one, because you have 3 measurements on each of these beautifully designed labels. The largest is 1 inch, so I'm going to use this one up here at the top. So I'm just going to slide my cardstock in. It's got these tracks that'll hold your cardstock. Press down, and there I have just nipped off the front of that banner. And now it's ready for me to stamp on. So I have Night of Navy ink to go with my card. And my stamp says, "So lucky to call you friend." If you're new to stamping, just remember, don't go too heavy-handed with your stamps. Light tapping is all you need to get enough ink. You can turn your stamp over and check and see if there's enough ink. If you're not sure that you got it all, just tap it again. Just don't sink it down into the ink, because then you'll have ink on your block and your fingers and lots of places you don't want it. And then I just do light pressure, 1, 2, 3, lift up, and there we go. And if you happen to make a mistake, flip it over and try the other side. Okay, while I have my Stampin' Pierce mat out, I'm gonna go ahead and do some stamping on the inside of the card. So my matching sentiment on the inside says, "Just a little reminder that you are loved." And again, just a little bit of pressure. Now, I like having accents on the inside of my card. Sometimes I use strips of designer series paper, and other times I use stamped images. I'm going to use soft succulent ink and add a couple images here on the inside. There's this little leaf accent stamp, which I think is perfect for my corners. And then I want to do my envelope. So always check to make sure my envelope is right way up. I stamped an envelope upside down earlier. And then this is a separate floral image, or leafy image, I guess you could say, for the envelope. So that is all the stamping I'm gonna do for the moment. So I'm gonna take my insert and go ahead and put that in my card. This just gets centered inside. And then my banner, I'm going to put flat here on the right side of the card. I could always pop this on dimensionals if I wanted to, but I'm gonna butt the edges right up against each other and center that top to bottom. All right, now, I am going to add a stamped image to the front of the card. I didn't think you wanted to watch me color all night long, so I actually pre-stamped and die cut this beautiful floral image, and I used our watercolor pencils, and this I used Night of Navy, and I decided to do rich razzleberry for the centers of the flowers and on these little berries here, and my leaves are Old Olive. After I watercolor penciled the image, I took a blender pen and just went over everything, and that way it just softens it a little bit, kind of takes away some of those pencil lines. So I'll show you a couple different versions of this card in just a minute with some different colors. But I'm gonna grab a couple dimensionals and I'm gonna pop this up to give it some height. I could glue this flat as well, so you can pop what you want or lay flat what you want on the card. So there you go. And just as a finishing touch, I am going to add some of our opal rounds. And I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool to help me get these off. And let's see here. Whoop, they like to stick to my fingers. This is why I use my Take Your Pick tool. Otherwise, I find them on my fingernails later. So I'm going to put a small gem there, and then a couple here on the card as well. You can obviously add more bling or less bling, whatever you like. Okay. So there is our quick and simple tri-panel DSP card. Now, I mentioned a moment ago different colors, and so I did a couple different versions of this card. Here I used Balmy Blue and Night of Navy. Actually, I lied. This is just Balmy Blue for the flower, Night of Navy in the center, and I put some garden green in there with my leaves. And then this version has Daffodil Delight for the center and a little bit of Balmy Blue and Night of Navy for the flower. So you can see different looks just by changing up the coloring. I could have used Stampin' Blends if I wanted. But this is a great all occasion card, and it's very simple. It's just the 3 panels of DSP, a sentiment, and a stamped image. And you can see here that any kind of stamped image will work. It doesn't have to be floral images or anything specific. You can use whatever you have at home. I have these little, this is the This Little Piggy set. And who doesn't love a cute little pig, right? And these are fun to color. I don't know if you can check out the coloring I did with our Stampin' Blends. So there's the inside. I even colored the inside. And I like this one so much, I made a slightly different version. Here I mixed up the order of the designer series paper, and I flipped the banner portion because I didn't want the little piggy over here looking like he was driving off the card. This way he's kind of driving to the birthday party, and just kind of a fun card there too. And then next up, as I said, it's a great showcase for designer series paper. So here's another card. Here I used a banner all the way across, the 2 different layers. I didn't cut the second layer short. I added my sentiment right on there, and I added tone on tone with my little speckle stamp behind, just to give it some depth and texture. If you're not sure or you don't have a stamped image that will work, if you've got punches or die cuts, they will work too. You don't have to have a stamped image on the front. Here I even just kept it simple with 1 strip of cardstock instead of 2. And then I used that punch and added a little bit of bling that just kind of gives it a little something on the front of the card. So it's a really quick and easy way to use designer series paper, that printed paper you might have laying around. And if you're thinking, well, I don't have any DSP, that's okay. Grab a stamp set. Use the same dimensions, the 1 3/4 by 4. Go ahead and cut them apart and then stamp with the same stamp set in different colors. Here I used Crumb Cake, Cajun Craze, and Soft Suede. Put it on an early espresso base to kind of keep that neutral theme going. And then I added an embossed piece of Cajun Craze here, and then my leaf tag and some bling. So that one doesn't even use DSP at all. And you can always mix and match. If you cut your paper correctly and have a stamp that works for the front, you can actually turn the orientation sideways on the card. It won't work with everything, but it did happen to work for this card for me. And I decided to just do 2 different prints of DSP and did them top and bottom with the different piece flipped in the middle. So great for any occasion. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this tri-panel DSP card. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can click the notification bell and be notified each time a video is posted here on the page. And you can always check me out on the web or over on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.